First up, at UFC 270, we have Jack Della Maddalena versus Pete Rodriguez. Jack Della Maddalena, 10-2, 5-0 in his last 5. He has not lost a fight since 2016. Pete Rodriguez is 4-0, so he's 4-0 in his last 5. Pete Rodriguez, he's making his UFC debut with only 4 professional fights, which I have very hard feelings about that. Jack Maddalena, he's coming off a solid win on Contender Series where he doubled his opponent's strikes. He is a striker. He's got a really interesting style where he just sort of plots forward on his toes. He's got a really nice step-in jab. But then anything that comes back at him, he just takes huge steps back. Like he moves his entire body backwards to avoid those strikes, resets, come forward, and then starts the whole cycle over again. And he has deceiving power, almost like a Sean Strickland, where things that look like setup shots or just jabs end up rocking people and in some cases finishing them. He's got solid takedown defense, but his takedown offense could definitely use some work. Pete Rodriguez, he only has 4 professional fights. 4. His entire career is 4 fights long. And he was fighting as an amateur at 19, so he did start pretty young. He's got a brawling style striker. He throws really heavy. He has no problem staying inside the pocket. And even his lack of experience, it doesn't mess him up. He stays very composed in some of these tough situations. He's got a solid, he does a really good job pushing away from tie-ups, making space and throwing bombs. I've seen a bunch of his fights where people will tie him up, and he does a really good job covering, pushing, and then just wild bombs from there after he made that space. If you go out and you look up some of his fights, all of these tattoos, the neck, all of the tattoos are basically brand new. So you're going to see footage of him from like last year, 2 years ago, and it's going to look like a different human being. It is him, I assure you. And listen, Pete Rodriguez, he got the opportunity to fight in the UFC, and obviously he took it. Jacob and I have talked about people with too many amateur fights or not enough amateur fights or jumping into things a little too soon. And Pete Rodriguez, honestly, I think it's a little too soon. It's a really tough debut. He just does not have the experience. With that being said, it is striker versus striker. And anytime that's the case, especially somebody like Pete who can be wild, has some power, he'll always have the chance. There'll always be an opportunity for him to win the fight, but I think it's just not going to be enough. Jack Maddalena, I think, absolutely smokes Pete Rodriguez. And I have a bet on Maddalena to win by KO or TKO, 1 unit, and it's minus 140. So it's not even great odds. What are your thoughts, Jakey? But you're not. If you're going to say Pete Rodriguez, you're off the stream. I'm doing the rest of it by myself. So, adios. Think I won't move on?
Listen, Jack should win the fight. I think what were the odds? Minus 325, plus 275, something like that. I think the odds are 100% correct that Jack should win this fight. He's a very measured fighter. You can tell he's very technical in his striking. Angel mentioned he's got that high guard. He's more of a counter puncher before, throwing those big power shots where Pete Rodriguez will throw the lead power shots. I worry about Jack being a little too tentative for Pete, because I think Pete is going to take advantage of this opportunity. Short notice. You mentioned the 4-0 fights. He wasn't. I think he had 9 fights as an amateur. He wasn't 9-0, but I think he had 9 amateur fights. So he does have a little bit more experience than just the 4-0 record. But I agree. Even in those 4 wins, if you look at the quality of fighters that he was fighting, was not very good either. But there's just something about the way that Pete fights. He gets a little lungy, right? But I think he's a good enough boxer that Jack, with that high guard. First of all, Jack a lot of times will just block with his hands. It's not a lot of head movement. It's more of like just trying to parry shots. And I think I think Pete is good enough boxer that he can get in there before Jack can counter. And I think if he works the body, I think the body shot's going to be there, because I think Jack comes in with a very high guard. A lot of times you see out of boxers, I think that he can work the body. I think he can land the power shots where Jack's trying to wait for the counter. He can't get countered himself. That's where he's going to run into issues. But there's something about this fight where I think it just matchups perfectly for Pete. If he was going to win a fight against somebody that's probably better than him, I think this is it. And I think Pete finds a way to get it done.
So Pete's your pick.
He is my pick. There's something about Jack that, and Jack is actually kind of the perfect fighter to where he's very, very patient until he has you hurt, right? And the second he has you hurt, he's going in there for the fucking kill. So, Pete has got to watch that. But I just think Jack's a little too tentative. I think Pete takes advantage of opportunities, just all over him early. Lands the big shot.
Yeah, frankly, I think Pete's a little undersized. He should be a lightweight instead of a welterweight. There's not a ton out there. There's his fights and then his Instagram. I just, anything's possible. It's striker versus striker. I'm just not reading it that way at all. We don't have DraftKings pricing, so we don't have monkey knife fight strike lines yet. Those will probably pop up later in the week. Same with the next fight. There's 2 added fights. DraftKings only has 11, but I'm incredibly confident in Jack Maddalena to win. So much so that I put that KO TKO prop bet on him. So
Yeah, and I don't. This is This is one of those where if I'm picking the fight, if we have to pick a fight, I'm gonna pick Pete. I'm probably not gonna put money on Pete because I think Jack should win the fight. He is a better fighter. But if I'm making a pick right now, I think Pete pulls it out.
All right. Well, that's the beauty of this sport. We will find out in a few days.